What's happening? No signature line yet? Can somebody fill me in? Now, Caitlin Clark came out recently and spoke about the creative process with designing a shoe. Fair enough. Maybe that's the reason for the holdup. But companies like Nike, they might let you feel like you're the one in control of the creative process.
Notice how long that list is. No signature shoe, no commercials, no t-shirts, no merchandise. For the biggest star in women's basketball, during her historic rookie season, while she's breaking attendance records and pulling 3 million viewers to regular season games, Nike went silent, and now we might finally know why.
Escalation. Let's get right to the press release from the EEOC. Federal agency seeks court order for information related to systemic race discrimination allegations that athletic footwear and apparel giant discriminated against white workers, including via Nike's DEI programs. St. Louis. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission announced today that the federal agency filed an action in federal court.
This isn't speculation anymore. On March 19, 2025, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission filed a federal enforcement action in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri. The charge? Systemic race discrimination against white employees. The EEOC is investigating whether Nike engaged in what they call a pattern or practice of disparate treatment against white employees, applicants, and training program participants in hiring, promotion, demotion, separation decisions, including selection for layoffs, internship programs, and mentoring, leadership development, and other career development programs. Those aren't my words. That's the federal government's official court filing. And the investigation goes back to 2018, covering 7 years of Nike's internal practices.
You think if these allegations are happening at the base level, the hiring level, the training level, the promotion level, it's not happening at the marketing level? It's not happening at the, okay, well, she might be the biggest star, but DEI initiative, we got to put this person in front instead. DEI initiative, we got to put this shoe at the back burner and put this shoe at the forefront.
Here's where this connects to Caitlin Clark. If these alleged discriminatory practices are happening at the hiring level, the training level, the promotion level, and the executive compensation level, do you really think they stop at the marketing department? Do you think the people making decisions about which athletes to push, which products to prioritize, which campaigns to fund, are somehow operating in a vacuum separate from the rest of the company? The EEOC's subpoena requested information about 16 specific programs that allegedly provided race-restricted mentoring, leadership, or career development opportunities. 16 programs. That's not an isolated incident. That's organizational structure.
Why didn't this come out her rookie season? Oh, because we were waiting on the logo. Oh, that's right. We were waiting on the logo. The logo. The EEOC's investigation and subpoena sought information related to these allegations, with some requests going back to 2018. Information sought included criteria used in selecting employees for layoffs, information related to the company's tracking, and use of worker race and ethnicity data. Back to the logo. Well, we only saw the logo when we saw the logo. We don't know.
Let's talk about the merchandise timeline, because it's genuinely bizarre. Caitlin Clark signed with Nike in April 2024. Her rookie season ran from May through September. The Indiana Fever made the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, largely because of her. She averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists per game. She broke the WNBA single-season assist record. And during all of that, Nike released exactly 0 Caitlin Clark merchandise. The explanation we got: they were waiting on the logo. Just the logo. A simple graphic design element held up an entire merchandise line for a generational talent during the most watched WNBA season in history. And when the merch finally dropped in late 2024, it was a hoodie, some pants, and a t-shirt with a list of records on the back. The most basic, low-effort execution you could imagine from a company that built its reputation on iconic athlete marketing.
We don't know how long they decided on the logo and then waited and waited and waited and waited and then put out the merch. We don't know. We just don't know. Information related to the company's tracking and use of worker race and ethnicity data including as a factor in setting executive compensation and information about 16 programs which allegedly provided race-restricted mentoring, leadership, or career development opportunities. When the company failed to produce all the information sought by the subpoena, the agency filed an enforcement action in federal court.
But here's what makes this even more suspicious. We don't actually know how long that logo existed before Nike revealed it publicly. The logo could have been finalized in June. It could have been sitting on someone's desk in July. It could have been approved in August. We have no transparency into that timeline. What we do know is that Nike chose not to release any Caitlin Clark products during the exact moment when demand was at its absolute peak. Compare that to how Nike handled Angel Reese. Reese signed with Reebok initially, then appeared in Nike campaigns. She got immediate visibility, immediate marketing support. Or look at Aja Wilson, who's had a signature shoe since 2023. The differential treatment is obvious to anyone paying attention.
Quote, when there are compelling indications, including corporate admissions in extensive public materials, that an employer's diversity, equity, and inclusion related programs may violate federal prohibitions against race discrimination or other forms of unlawful discrimination, the EEOC will take all necessary steps, including subpoena enforcement actions, to ensure the opportunity to fully and comprehensively investigate, said Chair Andrea Lucas. Title VII's prohibition of race-based employment discrimination is colorblind and requires the EEOC to protect employees of all races from unlawful employment practices.
Now look at this Bloomberg analysis of Nike's workforce demographic shifts between 2020 and 2021. At the executive level, white employee representation dropped, while other demographics increased. Same pattern at the manager level. Same pattern in professional roles. Same pattern in less senior positions. This is data from Bloomberg News, not some random Twitter account. The EEOC's investigation specifically mentions that Nike's subpoena requests included criteria used in selecting employees for layoffs and information related to the company's tracking and use of worker race and ethnicity data, including as a factor in setting executive compensation. They're investigating whether Nike literally used race as a factor in determining who gets promoted, who gets paid, and who gets fired.
I said earlier, we have some Caitlin Clark merch over here. Nice stuff. The black is heavy. The gray is light. Perfect. We're in the Northeast over here. Works out great. What took so long for that? Interesting. A certain superstar in the WNBA, they sure got pushed really hard by Nike. And it kind of adds up a little bit if you think about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate that.
So let's connect all these dots. Nike is under federal investigation for systematic racial discrimination in their employment practices dating back to 2018. During that same period, they established diversity, equity, and inclusion targets for 2025. Those DEI programs are now specifically cited in the EEOC investigation as potentially violating federal civil rights law. And during Caitlin Clark's historic 2024 rookie season, when she became the biggest draw in WNBA history, Nike delayed her merchandise for months, offered no commercials, no marketing campaigns, and no signature shoe announcement. The question isn't whether Nike has DEI initiatives. They publicly announced those. The question is whether those initiatives crossed the line from promoting diversity into discriminating based on race. And if they did cross that line in hiring and promotions, it's not a stretch to ask whether marketing decisions were affected too. Think about the incentive structure here. If Nike executives have compensation tied to hitting specific demographic targets, and if those targets influence decisions about which employees get promoted and which programs receive funding, then every decision becomes filtered through that lens. It's not about who's the biggest star, it's about who fits the demographic goals. Caitlin Clark is the most popular player in the WNBA. That's not opinion, that's measurable fact. The Fever's average attendance went from 4,067 in 2023 to 17,035 in 2024. Road games featuring Indiana saw attendance increases of 200 to 300% in multiple cities. When Clark played in the Commissioner's Cup Championship game in June, it drew 1.54 million viewers on Amazon Prime Video. Her first playoff game pulled 1.84 million viewers on ESPN, making it the most watched first-round WNBA playoff game ever. And Nike's response to all of that was silence. No commercials, no signature shoe announcement. Delayed merchandise. Minimal marketing support. But here's the thing about major corporations under federal investigation: they don't typically admit wrongdoing until they're forced to. Nike's official response to the EEOC action was that it feels like a surprising and unusual escalation. Not a denial, not these allegations are false. Just surprised that the federal government is taking it this seriously. The EEOC doesn't file enforcement actions in federal court over nothing. They attempted voluntary compliance first. Nike refused to produce all the information requested in the subpoena. So the EEOC went to a federal judge to compel production. That's not a casual step. That means the agency believes they have sufficient evidence to justify forcing Nike to turn over 7 years of internal employment data, compensation records, and program documentation. Chair Andrea Lucas stated, "When there are compelling indications, including corporate admissions and extensive public materials, that an employer's diversity, equity, and inclusion-related programs may violate federal prohibitions against race discrimination or other forms of unlawful discrimination, the EEOC will take all necessary steps, including subpoena enforcement actions, to ensure the opportunity to fully and comprehensively investigate." Corporate admissions. That means Nike said something publicly that raised red flags. Extensive public materials. That means there's documentation out there beyond just employee complaints. Now think about what this means for Caitlin Clark specifically. She signed an 8-year, $28 million deal with Nike. That's the richest shoe deal in women's basketball history. But a big contract doesn't mean anything if the company doesn't actually market you. Patrick Mahomes has a massive deal with Adidas, but if Adidas never made commercials or released his merchandise, would that contract matter? The value isn't in the signing bonus. The value is in the platform, the exposure, the cultural impact. Nike gave Caitlin the money, but withheld the platform. And the timing of that decision coincides exactly with the period under federal investigation for race-based discrimination in company programs and initiatives. Could there be innocent explanations? Sure, maybe the shoe design really is taking longer than expected. Maybe Nike's marketing team is just incompetent. Maybe the merchandise delays were legitimate supply chain issues. But when you're under federal investigation for systematically discriminating based on race in your employment practices, and simultaneously delaying marketing for the biggest white star in a predominantly black league, the optics are catastrophic. And Nike had to know this was coming. Federal investigations don't happen overnight. The EEOC process involves complaints, investigations, requests for information, attempts at voluntary compliance. This has been building for months, possibly years. Nike's leadership knew they were under scrutiny, and they still chose to minimize Caitlin Clark's visibility during her breakout season. So here's the real question: was this a business decision or something else? Because from a pure business perspective, it makes no sense. Caitlin Clark is a marketing goldmine. She appeals to demographics the WNBA has struggled to reach. She's got crossover appeal beyond traditional basketball fans. She's exactly the kind of athlete you build campaigns around. Unless your decision-making is constrained by factors other than market demand. Unless you're trying to hit demographic targets that conflict with promoting your most marketable athlete. Unless you're worried about the optics of heavily marketing a white player in a league where 70% of players are black. And if that's the calculation Nike made, if they deliberately shelved Caitlin Clark's marketing to avoid criticism or to satisfy DEI metrics, then they didn't just fail her. They failed every WNBA player who could have benefited from the increased attention and revenue her popularity generates. The WNBA's new media rights deal is worth $200 million per year, up from $60 million. That increase happened because of viewership growth in 2024. Caitlin Clark was the primary driver of that growth. Her rising tide lifted everyone's boats. But Nike treated her like a liability instead of an asset. What happens next? The federal investigation continues. Nike will eventually have to produce the documents the EEOC requested. We'll find out whether their DEI programs crossed legal lines. And if they did, there will be consequences. Financial penalties, mandated policy changes, probably lawsuits from affected employees. But for Caitlin Clark, the damage is already done. You can't get back her rookie season. You can't recreate that moment when she was the biggest story in sports. Nike had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build a cultural icon, and they chose not to take it. So ask yourself, If you were Caitlin Clark and you're watching this federal investigation unfold, and you're realizing that your lack of marketing support might have been connected to discrimination issues at your sponsor company, how do you feel about that 8-year contract? Do you trust Nike to prioritize your career going forward? Or do you start looking for exit clauses? Because if Nike was willing to sideline her during her biggest moment, what makes anyone think they'll change course now? Let me know what you think in the comments.